Coming to you from Kscope 2019 in Seattle, I'm Bob Rubart with the Oracle Groundbreakers team, and my guest this morning is Gerald Venzl. How you doing, Gerald?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Bob.
No problem at all. Glad to have you. Tell the folks at home what you do and where you do it.
So I'm a product manager for the Oracle Database division. So I do Oracle Database as well as the cloud services around with it. And actually part of my day job is to fly around to conferences and evangelize our technology, such as here at Kscope.
And speaking of evangelizing, so what sessions are you doing here at Kscope?
So actually yesterday I had an emerging technology session talking a little bit about what technologies are coming or are about to come to become mainstream and how we can leverage them as a user as well as how we in Oracle leverage them.
What sort of technologies are on the horizon and what sort of impact are they going to have?
So I think one of the emerging technologies yesterday we covered that is already more coming into mainstream is containerization of software, just a different way of running software as we had in comparison to VM. So this would be your Docker, Kubernetes containerization. We talked about chatbots, also a technology that's there since a long time, but mostly on typing, but now it's going more into the vocal recognition and even facial recognition phase because you have the processing power available. And actually a big topic was machine learning and AI, which is also something that is there since a long, long time, actually, especially in the machine learning space. A lot of the algorithms are there since a long, long time, funnily enough. But again, we are at this point now where we have the compute power to actually leverage those algorithms on all of the data, while back in the 90s and 80s, you had, the algorithms there, but not the compute power to load all the data in and apply the algorithms to them.
What sort of questions did you get from the audience? I'm particularly interested in the machine learning because that of everything that you've talked about, that seems to be the one that generates the most interest, but also the most consternation.
Right, yeah. A typical question, of course, would be, well, is there any use for this, or is it just all fluff, right? Are we just following a hype or something? Or what are the real-world examples where you can use this? How can I use this or my company take advantage of that? And then, of course, the question number one always is like, what does it do? Like, why do we need it, so to speak, right? And actually, for me as an Oracle employee, we have a very good example where we use some of those algorithms or machine learning in our autonomous database cloud service, where we actually use it to predict the workloads, to tune itself, to secure itself, and so forth. So that kind of helps for people to understand a little bit, okay, where are the practicalities? Why do I want to use this? Or what could be possible? Of course, on the web out there's talks about everything will be self-driving, etc. The machines will take over and so forth. There's actually, I think the reality is we're still quite a bit away from that.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about autonomous database. What's new there? What's happening? What can we look forward to?
So I think the most exciting feature or work that we're doing on autonomous database is that we imagine a database where you no longer as a user, whether you're a developer or somebody who runs reports off of it, have to care and worry about how to tune your database. So, databases are obviously around since a long, long time, but actually one common theme where the relational database or NoSQL database, like, somebody will have to tune it eventually. It's like usually when something goes wrong, it's the database tier that something goes wrong, and then you would have to call up your DBA, and the DBA would go ahead and say, oh, I need to repartition the data, or we need to compress it, or put an index on, and stuff like that. And so what we are looking at is to actually be proactive along this workload or this path. So the database, the Oracle database, since a long, long time, since 2004, believe it or not, can actually record the workload and tell you exactly what resources your SQL query, for example, consumed, or how busy the database was in a given period of time, how much data was read from disk, how much time on CPU was spent, and so forth. So that information is there since a long time, but actually that was done for post-mortem tuning purposes, right? So for a long, long time, the DBAs would go in and say, okay, well, what's going on with the SQL query? Oh, it reads all the data. Okay, well, maybe an index would be better, and so forth. The next iteration of this, simply put, is to make the database smart enough to figure it out itself, to go like, well, you already know the workload, you already know all the steps you have to do, you already know to a fair amount of how it will be more efficient to execute a SQL query, thanks to the cost-based optimizer that we've introduced, to where we actually put just mathematical rules applied to, you know, like scanning an index of size X is faster than scanning a table of size Y because it's like 100 times bigger or something like that, or 1,000 times bigger. And so now just apply this logic and knowledge to auto-tune itself. And so that sounds all fancy, etc. There's like a lot of things going on, but like really on the vision is that you should just have a database that works, right? You should just have a database where you can put data in, where you can get data out, and not where you need a call in 2 a.m, somebody to go look at it because something broke or something got really, really slow and so forth. So this is what we're looking at. And of course, this is where we tie in those algorithms that are used in the machine learning space, right? For the workload predictions and so forth. So for example, you can, of course, track common patterns throughout an hour, a week, or a year, right? So let's say every Saturday you do your end of week reporting. Well, that will obviously show up as a pattern if you record long enough, right? And in our case, we just keep on recording indefinitely. So you will just see, oh, on Saturday, all of a sudden we read a lot more from disk. Or why is that? Oh, there's actually a bunch of SQL queries coming in. But the workload pattern changes, so maybe we can actually shift towards those workload patterns, make sure that we change the parameters that are there to say, well, read more data from disk because you basically crunch a lot of data and so forth. And then on Sunday or Monday, flip it back when you go back into your typical OLTP processing throughout the week.
And of course, taking performance off of the DBA's plate frees the DBA up to do other stuff.
Exactly, yeah. And I think especially these days with the privacy and security regulations, I think DBAs are much more busy to figure out like which data is stored where and what are the rules there in those countries and so forth, and how do we make sure we don't break those rules, and how do we make sure that we still serve the data in a compliant way to, for example, other countries, right? Because every country has these privacy rules now, but if you're a multinational company, you may still want to be able from the US to see what employees you have in Germany. Maybe not all the data, but at least you want to see that you have employees in Germany and stuff like that.
Well, plus
right?
we're going to be chin deep in data.
Yes,
Absolutely. Between
yeah.
Connected devices and machine intelligence and chatbots and what have you. We're about to be confronted with a mountain of data. Yeah.
Even like that guy, right? There's like a little Wi-Fi chip on the back here. That the silver guy here. That would just connect and send data, right? It's like, you're absolutely right. I mean, data is not getting less.
Yeah. Yeah, and the DBAs, I'm sure, will appreciate having the time to deal with all this new stuff. One last question. What do you want to learn here at Kscope?
So I always come to conferences to find out what's new on the horizon. So, just stay in touch with people and the industry as a whole to see what's actually going on in it, and see whether there's, sometimes it just means that, we exchange ideas around the same technologies already, right? But sometimes actually there's also learning about something new. Yeah. To some extent, actually learning something completely entirely new that I haven't come across yet, right? And then I would go in the session and see, okay, what is it that, the presenter talks about, and then do my research afterwards. So it's like that's what I enjoy the most, actually, just, exchange knowledge with the fellow conference attendees and speakers and learn something new.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you for watching. For the Oracle Groundbreakers team, I'm Bob Rubart. Stay tuned.